to the event, the Southern Arc, Deepening India-Latin America Relations. I think it's one of the areas where increasingly the focus is shifting from various angles. If we look at what's happening in the Indo-Pacific, increasingly it's now a geography that is seen a part of the Indo-Pacific. The cliche that was used, the tyranny of geography, is something that has taken a backseat in terms of how India approaches Latin America as a whole, and uniquely bilaterally with countries in the region. I think there are various frameworks that are now important in terms of our outlook to that region. We have a fantastic panel, Ambassador Amarendra Khatwa. We have Manuel from Argentina, Professor Aparajita Kashyap, and my friend Aparajita Pandey from Amity University to talk about various issues. But let me just briefly outline some of the issues in terms of how Latin America remains a very critical geography now. There's been, of course, the energy race, the critical and mineral race that is now important in terms of the outlook, in terms of evolution of outlook of how we view Latin America, and Latin America views us in this part of the world. There's the China question, which perennially is attached to Latin America, because given the dependence between China and Latin America, if you look at the statistics from early 2000 to now, it's drastically changed. And often that comparative is used as a template to see how India should look at Latin America. What are the gaps where we can fill, etc. So economic ties is, of course, at the helm in terms of how we look at Latin America and vice versa. Specifically about certain countries, I'll leave it for the speakers to dwell on. But I think broadly, there's also the global South narrative in terms of how we see Latin America with similar historical evolution in many ways with certain countries. Multilateralism has grown against the narrative that we've entered the era of multilateralism. We also look at Latin America in a certain light, which is similar, where there is an arc connecting us to Latin America, and this geography, particularly Indo-Pacific, as I've already mentioned. Security ties is an element that is popping up exceedingly at the helm in terms of how India should engage with Latin America and various countries in Latin America. And finally, what's happening in the United States, there's been a drastic policy shift in the US from Washington. Latin America is at the backyard. Often, Latin America is not is a region which is often seen, being very close to America, but being very distant in many ways in terms of the historical evolution of policies, historical ties with certain Latin American countries. But will that shift? I think you're seeing that shift increasingly in certain countries of the Caribbean, also Latin America, for example, Mexico, tariffs from Washington, and what impact it has had in terms of the US-Mexico ties. But with that broad spectrum, let me just stop and hand over to the speakers of the day. In terms of dwelling, I'll ask them to make an initial pitch about their respective views on India-Latin America relations, and then we'll take it from there. May I invite Professor Aparajita? Also, I think I'm happy to welcome the Argentinian Charge d'Affaires. Sir, welcome to this gathering. May I now invite Professor Aparajita to make.
How much time do you give me?
So let's start with initial 8 to 10 minutes or 7 minutes,
Okay.
and then each speaker,
right.
and then we'll follow it up.
So as an academic, I'll take you back to the evolution, not going into trade, energy, and about visits and exchanges, ministerial exchanges, because that's Ambassador Khatwa's domain. I'll confine myself to evolution and broadly giving you an overview. So let us talk about the similarities that India and Latin America share. So if you look at India and most countries of Latin America and Caribbean, they are part of the developing world. Interestingly, 33 countries in Latin America and Caribbean, none of them developed, all of them developing except Haiti, right? So that makes us, so that's why we take one country, India, and a region, an agglomerate of 33 countries, and we study them together. Highly unequal societies. If we talk about infancy in terms of democratization and politics, both of us are in political infancy stages, despite Latin America and Caribbean getting independence between 1810 and 1825. Despite that, they've had waves of authoritarian regimes coming in. So in terms of democratization, they are like us, infancy. And both of us are enriched with culture, sizable middle class, and indigenous population. That's why both are comparable actors in international politics. Now, similar experiences in terms of inward-looking development strategies. Latin American countries went through import substitution industrialization. We went through Nehruvian socialist model, which talked about the state-owned enterprises, or what we call the public sector units, occupying the commanding heights of economy. So similar things happened in Latin America. And that's why we make them come together, we bring them together to study comparisons. However, there are differences as well. The difference is in terms of the nature of colonization. Whereas in India, it was not about land grabbing, it was just about taking the resources, sending it back. The nature of colonization in Latin America and Caribbean was different. It's about occupying land. So that, and controlling haciendas, the oligarchic setup, all those factors were there in Latin America and Caribbean, which was not the case in India. Now, India's stories has been, after it became democracy in 1947, we've just been a democracy. Whereas in Latin America and Caribbean, democracy has been punctuated with authoritarian regimes. In terms of sociological aspects, we have seen a concept called bonded labor, like Bandhua Majdoor, whereas in Latin America and Caribbean, we've seen something like slavery and indentured labor. So these are some of the differences. However, why do we talk about relations? Because either India has certain attractions or Latin America and Caribbean has certain attractions. So let me put the Indian pull, that is the Indian attraction first. The first I would put in the current context is India's growing demand for energy, right? So second pull is India's soft power, that is yoga, art of living, Kathak, music, cuisine, all these are India's pull. The third pull is India's enormous strides in the IT industry or IT-enabled services, which has found a huge market and huge acceptance in Latin America and Caribbean region. The other thing is, and most importantly, if they access India, it becomes an outpost to Asia. So that is another attraction for Latin America and Caribbean to get interested or get stationed in India. Now, let me now go to what is Latin America's and Caribbean's attraction. The most important, according to me, and I teach political economy, and this is where I know Manuel will also agree, is Latin America, ever since the lost decade in the 1980s, has always weathered out of this economic crisis through sound economic management practices. So lost decade, they came out of it. There was a second lost half decade, which was between 97 and 2002. They came out of it. Global financial crisis. Latin American countries were not hit hard because they've already witnessed the last decade. India also wasn't badly affected by the GFC 2008. So how they have, through their sound management practices, come out of the economic crisis, multiple of them, is also what makes India lean towards Latin America and Caribbean. The other is there are 3 G20 economies. So Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, 3 of them are in Latin America. That makes us come together. Then there's a huge demand for IT-enabled services. So that there's a demand and there's a supply. So we just fit like jigsaw puzzle there. And now the lithium triangle. So because India has announced that we'll have an all uh, electric car fleet by 2030. That's the intention of the government. So we need lithium, and who better than the lithium triangle countries to supply that? Now let me take you to the evolution of connection. It's not the present attraction or anything. It goes a little back. And it started with Nehru's visit to Latin America. And the non-aligned movement also was a reason why they came together. Indira Gandhi, at that time, 1968, she visited a few of the Latin American countries. Ambassador will talk about those. I'm not touching upon that. And the third connect was tercer mundismo. This is the search for a third world identity. We used to call ourselves third world. And one of our professors at JNU would say, why do we call ourselves third world? We are the ALA countries. Africa, Latin America, Asia. So ALA, in Hindi, it means the best. So now the connotation that we have is global south. And therefore, this South-South connect, thanks to Lula's intervention and his endorsement of this connection, we have this connect of a third world identity, which started being called tercer mundismo. Therefore, there are mutual interests, which I have highlighted: globalization, visits by several dignitaries, apex visits, heads of state, ministerial delegations. All these have brought Latin America and India together. So what I'll do is that I'm sure, Ambassador, you'll enlighten us on how the divisions in the ministry, MEA, has taken place. Now they have a South American division. They have bifurcated it. So
I talk about substantive problem issues, trading.
All right, okay. So now we used to have a minister, I think it was JS West who would look after. Now we have JS South America, JS Central America. So this is the kind of emphasis that even the government is taking. And how did it begin? It all began with in 1984, when Rajiv Gandhi was the prime minister. He wanted to create a special program, and that program was called Focus Latin America and Caribbean, the Focus LAC program in India, and the budget was deliberated in the parliament. So anything about Latin America was discussed in the parliament. And if you know Ajay Jadeja, his father, Daulat Singh Ji P. Jadeja, he was one of the protagonists of Latin America-India relations. So in one of the parliamentary debates, he had said, India could no longer afford to ignore Latin America and Caribbean. So this was the kind of emphasis that was given. So I know how we have seen how we have had BRICS summit, Prime Minister Modi going there. This year we had Gabriel Boric, the president of Chile, come to India. Recently we had the president of Paraguay, Sebastian Peña, who came here. So this is the kind of exchanges. 3 visits by the external affairs minister. So all this has brought us together. Apart from this, Latin America and India have had similar stance at multilateral fora. So G20, BRICS, IBSA, any UNFCCC, they have the similar stand on climate change. So these are the collaborations even at multilateral fora, we take similar stands. Now, we know about how one aspect that I would like to highlight here is how is India's connection with Latin America being shaped by China. China has a huge presence, and we cannot match China's money or their capability and their shrewdness. We can't match that. But at least that gives us an impetus that we have to be there. If we pull out, a vacuum will be created. China took advantage of the Cold War, end of Cold War. United States, which used to treat Latin America as its backyard, suddenly lost interest. There was a vacuum. China rightly stepped in. And how did it step in? Not showing any interest of ideology, just being purely business-minded in infrastructure development and nowhere was it demonstrating any aspirations of ideologically indoctrinating the Latin American countries. So that was one advantage. So now China, because it is there, India has another reason to be there. Now, let me look at some of the cultural connects. And here, not in the mainland of South America, we cannot, take advantage of our diasporic connect, but at least in Caribbean, we take advantage of our diasporic connect. So Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, all these countries, because of the diasporic connect, we have had Pravasi Bharatiya Divas being celebrated, and there's a lot of commonality and exchanges there. So what I'll do is, now I'll come to the present scenario. And how do we look at how it has, the ties have evolved? Now, the first thing is that I said non-alignment, right? So India has been a votary of non-alignment, and many of you will feel that NAM is dead, NAM is irrelevant. So India has taken advantage of that, and it has capitalized on the concept of strategic autonomy. So with every country, it engages at the merit of the case without committing military forces. So that's how India is now looking at Latin America, through a lens of strategic autonomy. Second is that they have started, having ties or pacts with the regional groupings, because 33 countries having bilateral ties may be too many. So what they've done is they have started, like when Modi ji went to Guyana in November 2024, he also attended the CELAC meeting. So at one forum, you have all the heads coming together. So this is how India is focusing. So it has a preferential trade agreement with MERCOSUR, free trade agreement with many of the individual countries, but also with some of the regional groupings. Now, one important thing is, and here I would like to just dwell upon how we have been contributing. So if you look at the evolution of Latin America and Caribbean studies in India, it has also had a part in bringing the ties together, because, academic inputs are important. So if you look at the Latin American and Caribbean studies in India, we started in 1968, way back in 1968. And there was a Fulbright scholar who had come to JNU. And the credit goes to him. So there was a professor of American studies, Professor Narayanan, and he was asked to, start a Latin American studies program. So from 1970s, we have had a dedicated Latin American studies program. So exchange of scholars, like Manuel has been to our school and he has delivered a lecture about his book. So we've been actively, inviting scholars, and that also keeps the interest alive in both the countries. Now, let me now conclude, because I know I'm taking a lot of time. What I'll do is I'll just bring you to the obstacles that have been there. The obstacles, of course, we have no direct connectivity. That is a dampener, but not so much. If you have the intent, we do travel 36 hours, 40 hours, but the intent should be there. The second barrier has been language, but if you look at India, almost every other school offers Spanish education. So language, no barrier at all. Google Translate is there, so that can be overcome. The problem for us has been, for India has been, we've always focused on the big countries. So our ABCM, Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Mexico, that's it, period. We don't want to go into collaborations with smaller countries like Bolivia. Now we have changed, but the initial obsession was such. And so the moment, Brazil said that it doesn't want to sign the BRI, India has taken a lot of advantage of this situation. And Lula and Modi, if they come together, Latin American collaborations are going to get enhanced. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I think two or three, several important points, but two or three critical points that I thought, you're mentioning of energy, power, and IT as three leverages was really brings our attention back to some of the important things, the lithium triangle, which I think we'll dwell on more as we go forward. But let me now invite Ambassador Khatwa to make his remarks.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. I know all the 33 countries of Latin America. Let me speak major points, what I'm going to delve on, then we'll discuss it. If you know, the 33 Latin American countries, their annual import is $1.5 trillion. And their exports is $998 million. As far as India goes, we take credit that from 24 billion in 2010, we have reached about 50 billion in 2025. Note these points. Second, Latin America is very far, as Professor said. Connectivity is not there. And distance is there. Understanding the language is a problem. But China is doing extremely well. China is #1 trading partner of all the 33 countries, not USA. Second, India is the 7th largest supplier of goods to Latin America. In 24, it was about $21 billion. But it is about 1.4% of the total imports of Latin America. As far as imports are concerned, 30% of our imports are crude petroleum, basically which we process and send back. Venezuela, Argentina, these are the countries. I have served in Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, all those Central American countries in my postings. Therefore, to increase our cooperation in Latin America, 2-3 things we have to keep in mind. One, we have lots of visits. We have lots of organizational structure, but we do not have proper monitoring system. We do not have proper follow-up system. Every time a visit takes place at the Prime Minister or presidential level, we talk about it. But proper monitoring is not there. 2, Latin American priorities are historical reasons with Europe and America. To break it, we have to identify areas of cooperation. They are, for example, our edible oil security. We completely depend on Latin America. We can increase it through investment, through processing, through free trade areas, through setting up of operational bases in Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, for example. Second, we have, like, for example, defense cooperation talks with many countries. Most of the Latin American countries, due to strategic or geographical need helicopters. We can supply them along with spare parts and maintenance parts. But processing is very slow. When we are talking about why processing is slow, partly government is responsible, that is Ministry of Commerce and Ministry of External Affairs. Partly also our trade bodies, CII, FICI, they take jamboree of delegations, no follow. With the small countries in Central Asian Republic, they do much more follow. When we are talking about agriculture, for example, Argentina is super in biotechnology research. In many of our areas, many of Indian provinces, we can use the technology. But once we identify the collaboration, again, the follow-up is limited. When I was ambassador there, I started something called regional action plan. Each region of Argentina is different. We got 8 governors. That resulted in $10 billion trade, which also we succeeded in exporting our pharmaceuticals to Argentina. That happened during my time. Then science and technology cooperation. Most of Latin America are interested in space technology. They are interested in say vaccine technology, for example. Like say when COVID took place, one of our ready-made market was Latin America. There are many bulk pharmaceuticals which export there. Also, related technology also we can export. Say the three major countries we talk about. One is Argentina. Argentina is we are Argentina's fourth largest trading partner, about $8 billion. And our major exports are bulk drugs, two-wheelers. And Argentinian investment in India, you should know, it's about $120 million. There are lots of Argentinian companies here. When you are talking about lithium, everybody talks about lots of potential. The lithium triangle, the countries, Argentina, Peru, Bolivia, it's not easy to mine. It's very difficult. In many areas, India does not have the technology. Two, the local protests are there because when you dig it, there are lots of geographical, land-related problems. Therefore, a strategy must be planned. NALCO has already signed it, and we are trying to send more companies there. But short-term, medium-term, long-term strategies should be separate with inter-ministerial monitoring and direct involvement of trade organizations. We have 76 big companies present in Latin America. We manufacture. You talk about United Phosphorus, it is there. Say our services export is touching about $30 billion. Whole of Latin America needs our services help. We can develop that module with Spanish language that will become $100 billion. These strategies need to be worked out. Then we are talking about Argentina. We have just started supplying helicopters, helicopter parts, and maintenance services. This will increase. Mexico, our trade is about $14 billion. Mexican investment in India is about $810 million. And India's export is about $4 billion. When the NAFTA was signed, we used our presence in Mexico to enter into Canadian and US market, but it has slowed down. One is distance, but second is, say, time has come, I say, for promoting our interest in Africa, we have strong technical cooperation agreements, arrangements. For Latin America, we must create something called Trade Investment Cooperation Funds. It's like we can put the financial organization, banks, and big companies who are there, the 76 companies together, and create this fund. That will help generation of lots of business interest. And soft power we are talking about, which is Latin America loves India. As I used to crack a joke, Ambassador don't mind, like I used to tell Argentina is year of suffering in Latin America. Because they have lots of connection, history. Latin America has lots of connect with many countries of the world, whether it is Germany, all over. So therefore, the soft power which they like is fine, but we have not exploited it in the benefit of India. You know, Chinese language is taught in 67 universities in Latin America. Yoga is in 37 universities, but we do not have yoga teachers speaking Spanish. Spanish-speaking yoga teachers from India. We do not have that. These are the points are very important, and we'll discuss all this when we indulge in question-answer session. Then second is, anti-Chinese feeling is coming because they are using the BRI, neo-colonialism model in lots of Latin American countries. Time has come. Politically, we must nurture extremely good relationship with Latin America to get statements against China, against Pakistan in favor of India. I stop here.
Thank you, Ambassador, for that note. I thought some of the gaps were clearly laid out, and there's clearly, as we can see, a space for a policy paper on India-Latin America relations with all those gaps put together will certainly form a strong basis of how we can develop and go forward. I thought your NAFTA agreement was really timely because what the United States has done in terms of the tariffs, one of the ways they've accused China of entering the US market is circumventing the NAFTA agreement and Mexico using Mexico as a base. So that remains very, very contemporary in terms of our discussion. But let me now turn to Manuel for his remarks.
Okay. Well, it's difficult after these two excellent presentations, to to add. But well, first, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Orf and Vivek, for organizing this panel. It seems that young people here seem it's nice because we need more young people studying on our areas, and we have a huge work to do because a lot of knowledge have to be developed in order to understand both India and Latin America. So thank you very much for this opportunity. Well, mainly I'm a scholar that I made my PhD on India economic history, from a Latin American point of view. And I am working on India since 2014. I have this book, India from Latin America. You can see it in Flipkart. But I will not speak about the book or this. I will try to speak on the India and Latin American relation, mainly based on some activities that I have been doing in the last years, advising some governments, universities, and companies in Latin America, and seeing mainly in South America. I made my PhD in Brazil, but I am an Argentinian. Also, thank you, Marcelo, for being here. So, like a South American point of view of our opportunities and challenges, because as you know, Latin America is not a country. I mean, Latin America have different countries, different regions, and each country and each region have its own challenge. So, in the last 10 years, we have advanced a lot, I think, mainly based on trade, and mainly based on commodities, Our exchange in this area has grown, mainly petroleum, soybean oil, and also some mining. You are importers of copper and gold, and in Latin America we have copper and gold. So these are the main areas. Petroleum, agribusiness. Also minerals, that we are selling to India. At the same time, we are importing mainly pharma, automotive, and of course services, The region, Latin America, has a superávit in general terms with India, and this is good for us in this sense. At the same time, in the last years, India opened some embassies, such as the embassy in Paraguay. I think that an embassy in Bolivia is being planned. Well, so this is a good sign, of course, because it shows that there is interest in the region. At the same time, Shankar visited South America 2 years ago, mainly Argentina, Brazil, and Uruguay. So it's also important to have a foreign ministry visit that visit the region. At the same time, the high-tech scholarships are important for the Latin American people, because if we do not have the high-tech scholarships, the scholars or the bureaucracy cannot come to India. So high-tech is good in order to come to India and to know more about India. At the same time, in defense, as Ambassador was telling us, also there have been some advances, and as also both speakers were telling us, soft power, the Indian soft power is really strong in the sense that in Argentina, in Brazil, in Latin America, the idea of yoga is really spread. I mean, we practice yoga a lot. Also, Ayurveda medicine is also spread, is also there. Also, the Indian dance is also there. Yeah. Now that you have different films in Netflix and series in Netflix, we see these films. So the Indian soft power is really strong in Latin America, and this is good in some sense. So I think that in the momentum in the last 10 years is a good one. It's true that it's mainly pushed by Indian growth. Yeah, you know that you cannot think on one relation between countries if there is no growth. Yeah, and India is growing a lot. So as India grows a lot, you are importing different items, and this is the main driver of the relation in the last 10 years. And of course, we have, as Aparajita was telling us, different cultural and social relations, but we have to recognize that the main player here is India. Yeah, and India has to assume this leadership, because India is going to be, or is, the fourth economy in the world, and is the most populated country. So India have to lead these efforts. That said, there are some challenges that some of them were already said. Some issues with visas, in the sense that we should be more deliver and fast with visas. Also, as said, the distance. Yeah, there is by now scarce academic cooperation. I mean, we know each other. We know who is the people that study India in Latin America and Latin America in India. But we need to consolidate this in systematic and systemic research. Yeah. This is not too much money, but there should be efforts on this. Yeah. We also need to build local partners here and in Latin America, because at the same time there are many people that says that is like a expert in India or have, and it's difficult, for example, for the business people to identify, well, who will be my partner, who I have to trust. So we have to recognize and build these local partners, both in India and in Latin America. As said before, China has a really strong penetration in Latin America, and is putting a lot of money in different areas, scholarships, infrastructure. So it's true that it's difficult to deal with this and compete with this. And as Ambassador was saying, we have to try to build some monitoring and some memory of the relation that we have built. We have different, visits from India to Latin America, from Latin America to India, but we have to work on this, and these do not have to be like an instant visit. Yeah, and this is difficult because we have governments that change. Yeah. Our bureaucracy, in the case of Latin America, it depends on the country. We have more strong bureaucracy and less strong bureaucracy. So the bureaucracy change, and you don't have the register of what has been done. Yeah. So this is an area that we should work on this, the follow-on and the monitoring of our relation. Yeah. And looking to the future, yeah, I would like to highlight some aspects. Yeah, one is that the one that I already said, that is that India should be the main player in this game, in sense that it's the biggest economy, and India should make more efforts in order to build its relation with Latin America. For the Latin American countries, Of course, that efforts should be done, but some countries the growth is not so fast. Some countries still have different problems of internal divisions. So India is not in the main region that we are playing. So I think that India have to have a more assertive approach to Latin America. Also recognizing that growth is in India. Yeah, growth process is in India. Consumption is in India. Investment in infrastructure is in India. So we have to take our entrepreneurs to India to try to learn, for example, in the area. And now I will say some areas. In particular, food and fuel, as you know, is a main area. Yeah, that will continue to be. You are importing around more than 1/3 of the Indian imports are related to energy. We have petroleum, critical minerals, also different minerals. We have agri-food. So these relations have to be stronger, yeah, around this area. Another area is health and vaccines, yeah. You have the Ayush ministry that have a quite good money. And vaccines, you have, of course, Serum Institute is delivering different bulk drugs to the Latin American labs. So health, you also have a lot of challenges in terms of access to health. I think that this area is of main importance for both regions, yeah. Of course, that digitalization is another area to work, and defense also is an interesting area. At the same time, to conclude, and then we can open to questions and these things, I think that another opportunity that India has is that India can play in different platforms. I mean, you speak of Indo-Pacific. You are part of Indo-Pacific. You are part of BRICS. You are part of G20. You are part of Global South. And you can move in these platforms. In the case of Latin America, of course, that Brazil is in the BRICS, yeah. I think that Argentina lost an opportunity not entering the BRICS, but we can discuss on this. Also, this idea of Global South, as Aparajita was telling us, that is some kind of continuing of the idea of Tercer Mundo, yeah, or non-aligned countries, is also a good platform to dialogue, yeah. So I think that in these platforms, mainly BRICS, BRICS Plus, Global South, the dialogue could be more deliberate and more enriched. So by now, I would stop here and then perhaps some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. Again, some very important points brought out, particularly of the infrastructure point. I thought the DPI, which I think the government of India is taking many steps in that direction. But more importantly, I think you pointed out some of the important advantages that India has in terms of soft power. But China remains brutally economic in its pursuit, and I think there are India will have to balance that duality well between soft power and economic pursuits in the region. But let me now invite Dr. Pandey for her remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to ORF and thank you, Vivek, for having me here. So by now, I think the stage has been set for everybody to realize that energy is one of the mainstays when it comes to India and Latin America relations. And instead of focusing on trade as a whole, I would focus on energy when it comes to trade. So like it has already been said, repeated, that energy dominates when it comes to trade between India and Latin America. it is about 33% of the trade between India and Latin America. For India, however, it makes up, when it comes to hydrocarbons, it makes up about 4% of all crude oil and natural gas that we import from all over the world. Now, when it comes to energy, the trade, or the potential rather, could be divided into oil and gas, which are the more conventional sources of energy, solar reliance, which is a step towards renewable sources of energy, and the potential in the lithium sector as well as the nuclear sector, which is just being discovered or explored rather. Of course, we will talk about China going forward, because I believe that that is something that nobody can ignore. So starting with the conventional non-renewable sources of energy, which are crude oil and natural gas. Like I said, India, it constitutes about 4% of India's imports from all over the world. Till now, Brazil, Venezuela, Mexico have sort of dominated where our energy resources come from, mostly crude oil. Now we have a potential to import from the Caribbean countries. Guyana and Suriname have both found immense amounts of oil in their seabeds, in their exclusive economic zones. In 2023 and 2021, we have imported from Guyana, I believe, and ONGC Videsh and Reliance are both companies that are looking into it. There is a growing supply from Mexico and Colombia as well, which is great for us. And like Ambassador Khatwa just said, that it's a great trade, because while it sounds like, oh, we are buying so much from the region, we do tend to refine the product and sell it back to the region, because our refining capabilities are well above par than most countries around the world. Venezuela has always been a country that we imported heavily from, but now in the past few years and going forward, that is going to change because of the sanctions and the tariffs. And we do need an upgrade in technology when it comes to harvesting that oil from Venezuela. Moving on quickly to renewable sources of energy. So Brazil is a country that comes up when we talk about renewable sources of energy, because back in 1973, when the whole world was sort of reeling under the oil shock, that is when Brazil decided that they needed a biodiesel, and came up with Pro-Alcool, which is an ethanol-based fuel, which has been considerably successful and is one of the most successful programs when it comes to biodiesel around the world. So India has been, of course, quite interested in that, and is exploring options of energy, of technology transfer, and just collaboration on R&D. Then we talk about the International Solar Alliance, where the program was propagated to harvest most of the solar energy. Like we have said, we have the region, Latin American region and India have a lot of similarities. And one of them is the kind of climate that we have. Our geographical zones are such that we are blessed with sunshine around the year. So solar energy Solar Alliance does make sense for most of the Latin American countries. And I believe Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Guyana, Jamaica, and Peru are already a part of the International Solar Alliance. If I'm missing out on one of the countries, I think somebody can join in. So the geographical positioning, like I said, does help in potential collaboration. Quickly moving on to lithium and the potential that lithium holds. I believe potential is the word that is going to come up again and again in the future in this discussion, because when it comes to Latin America and India, that's a word that we've been hearing for the past, say, 3 decades, and probably will be hearing in the future. There is a lot of potential, but still a lot needs to be done to actually reach that potential. The same is with lithium. The world is moving towards a safer, more less polluting fuel when it comes to automobiles, and lithium-ion batteries are something that has come up in a huge way. And the lithium triangle, the triangle between the geographical zone between Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile, is said to hold about 50% of all of the world's lithium resources. The problem is something that Ambassador already pointed out, that we are not clear as to how to harvest it in a manner that it does not create more environmental degradation than hydrocarbon fuels. It is not just the harvesting part that is difficult, it is also the manufacturing of those batteries. In itself, the manufacturing is quite a polluting process. So we have to actually balance out whether continuing to use hydrocarbon-based fuel is going to be more polluting in the long run, or switching to lithium-ion batteries and then setting up those manufacturing centers in a big way, harvesting in a region which is already environmentally sensitive. And we also have to take care of the sentiments of the local people there, who do tend to be very, very protective of their nature, as they should be. In any case, India is interested in lithium quite a bit. We have found reserves in Riyasi in J&K, but feasibility studies still need to be done. It's at a very nascent stage. So as of now, for India, the lithium triangle seems to be the one place where we would gravitate towards. So also Peru, I believe, has some amount of lithium, but again, still in nascent stages. So if that comes to happen at some time in the future, for that, India has already signed an MOU with Argentina. India has signed an agreement with the state lithium firm in Bolivia, which is called the YLB. And also in Chile, we are attempting to sign certain MOUs, so that when the eventual date comes of actually harvesting that lithium, India is right there as the first player. We are also looking at collaboration in mining, not just buying, but also transfer of technology, also looking at probably collaborating when it comes to R&D. What India is also interested in is setting up manufacturing units for the lithium-ion battery. Much like when it comes to oil and gas, we have the refining capabilities without actually having lots of crude oil resources. A similar thing can happen when it comes to lithium, where we don't have lithium probably, but we definitely can have a processing plant for refining of lithium and manufacturing lithium-ion batteries. The nuclear sector, again, is something that Latin America is now trying to look towards for energy generation, for power generation, and it's not something that the entire region has explored too much. Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina are the three countries that have the nuclear reactors. I think Mexico is building a third one. The rest of them have 2 each, or probably Argentina has 3 each, if they would correct me. And India has considerable expertise when it comes to nuclear energy, both for civilian and military uses. While Latin America as an entire region is not interested in the defense part of nuclear energy at all, it does make sense for them to look at nuclear energy when it comes to the civilian part for the power generation. And that is where India can come in with technology transfers, with expertise, with collaboration in the region as a whole. Till now, I haven't mentioned China, mostly because I was just focusing on what India and Latin America do at the present, or what the potential is. I will reiterate something that has already been said. China is brutal when it comes to economics. We, at the moment, cannot match their deep pockets. And at the same time, the bureaucratic process also is much faster when it comes to China. I believe that that is something that does play in their favor quite a bit. And we will need to find a policy that sort of circumvents China's approach to the region. I believe at this moment, when it comes to trade or when it comes to defense, India should find a niche for itself instead of going after what China is already doing. If we look at a niche market, that is something that we could succeed in. India and Brazil, we could exploit our bilateral relations as well. India and Brazil have a great cordial relation. India, Argentina, Mexico, we have cordial relations with most countries in the region. We have a diaspora connect with the Caribbean, which is huge, which has also been left unexplored till now, but now there is more interest in in the Caribbean from the Indian side. I believe for India, it makes strategic sense to look towards Latin America, that pivot from just West Asia and now Russia as a major energy supplier. A pivot towards Latin America does make strategic sense for India. And I believe the problem of the geographical distance and the people-to-people connect and just a lack of connect between these two regions, it can be overcome if there is more economic correspondence between the region. If there's more money coming in, more money flowing both ways, there is going to be better connection between these regions. So that is something that can be overcome. When it comes to organizations like MERCOSUR, India does have a PTA with MERCOSUR already. But again, when it comes to CARICOM, we have signed. We've signed. There's an India CARICOM Joint Commission, and there's a trade and investment framework that has been set up specifically so that trade can be boosted, it can be encouraged. But we still don't have any tariff wave off from India between India and CARICOM. So we feel that while there's certain infrastructure that has been laid out, again, like Ambassador said, there has been no follow-up. So there's just a lot of unexplored territory and potential when it comes to collaboration and cooperation between just general connect between India and Latin America, and that needs to be explored. And energy could be one sector that drives it, among others. So I think I'll rest my case at that, and Vivek can take over.
Thank you. It was many ways, it was good to tease out the lithium point a little bit, because I think that remains, it was a clear picture in terms of how we should nuance and moderate our anticipation looking into the future in terms of where and what India can do. I thought it was also important to lay out how the energy landscape has changed. And I think this will pop out in some of the questions that the audience will raise. Clearly there's been a shift in Washington in terms of how they look at energy. There have been various executive orders reversing policy decisions of the Biden era. We're looking at a completely new, or going back to the old non-renewable sources of energy from Washington. How that changes, and as was said by Dr. Pandey, that the pivot to LA makes Latin America makes strategic sense, in the sense that you have an over-dependence on certain regions in terms of non-renewables. But let me now open this. We have half an hour for Q&A. Open this up for question and answers. Be very specific and precise in your questions. Please introduce yourself and direct your questions to specific speakers.
Good evening, speakers. My name is Swapnil, and I am a sustainable management student. My question is basically to all of you. So India has always fallen behind in R&D, be it our ISRO, be it our defense, anything. We always lack funds in mostly R&D, and we are talking a lot about lithium triangle and how we need R&D for it. What do you think will be the stance or the collaboration between Latin American countries and India, so we can make the most out of this and turn and be halfway from developing country to developed country?
Good point. Madam Pandey spoke about petroleum. Most of Indian refineries are geared to Basra light or light grade of petroleum processing. But now we have 2 mega private sector refineries and other refineries we are building up for processing heavy bodied crude. All of Latin America produces heavy bodied crude. They have lots of priorities. They don't want to invest in setting up huge refineries which we can process and re-export back. This is the kind of R&D we're talking about. We do not, between India and Latin America, so for example, biotechnology, arid zone farming we are talking about. Many of the Latin American areas are interested in arid zone farming. With our collaboration with Israel, we have developed the arid zone farming technology, sprinkle irrigation technology. We can share with Latin America. What we are talking about, you are talking about the ideal situation. Till that point of time, what we have, what they have, we can start collaboration in R&D. That's the point I mentioned.
I also would like to say that Huma Siddiq is here, that she really works on also to build the India-Latin American relation. And Maria Jose is also here that she has made a really good PhD thesis on these issues. But answering the R&D question, it's true that there's an issue for India, but it's true that 0.7 of the GDP that is growing at a 6 or 7% rate is an amount that is growing in terms of the total amount of resources in R&D. So you are having more researchers in absolute terms. And the other point is only to stress that was what the ambassador was saying, in the sense that perhaps to advance in energy or biotech, we do in terms of international cooperation, we do not strictly need R&D in the hard sense, but mostly projects, productive projects, of course with technical knowledge and some R&D. But I think that the main difficulty is not R&D capabilities, but the productive process of for itself. Yeah.
That we're not talking about United States or Germany. In terms of R&D, we are talking about Latin American, Caribbean, and India. So both the regions have their comparative advantage. So what we should try is to look at the comparative advantage that we have. And the R&D may be at a moderate level or modest level, but we are not competing, with Germany or US. So that has to be kept in mind. So obviously we can collaborate.
And another point is that the public sector, the Indian public sector units, they have a lot of. If you see the amount of R&D that you are spending, is mostly on energy, and the public sector units have a strong presence on this. So if we are talking that one of the verticals is energy, there's R&D capabilities to work on.
I'm Dev Kumar, and I'm an independent observer. So we have this India-Africa Summit, which basically institutionalizes India's relationship with the entire African continent. So what are the chances of an India-Latin America summit kind of thing?
Despite British, I have served as ambassador to West Africa, 7 countries based in Abidjan. When you are talking about Africa, some kind of unity you can find in Africa because 24 million Africans live below $0.50 per day. But when you are talking about Latin America, despite our talking all the 33 countries, most of them are different. Therefore, our cooperation framework is also different with them. And second, the technical cooperation program with Latin America works in, say, power projects, water management projects, education. In Latin America, each is case specific. Therefore, it will take some time to build up India-Latin America Summit. I think the talks are on, but are very at conceptual stage. Thank you.
If I could just chime in, even in Latin America, there is in Africa, there is an African Union. In Latin America, there are these different organizations. Not one of them does not encompass all of them. So India has a PTA with MERCOSUR. India has something with CARICOM, with CEPAL, with Pacific Alliance. So we have this presence of, I wouldn't call it bilateral, but a sort of a regional presence in different organizations. It's very difficult to get an entire region together when it's not together even as a region itself. So that's why I think that is one of the problems.
Add to this that there is a possibility, and it's a very good idea. What you said should be taken up by somebody because we have a regional grouping. So sub-regionalism is the trend. But we have at least 3 robust regional groupings. One is PROSUR, UNASUR. They have their own differences on one country's presence, that is Venezuela. But by and large, most of the countries are there. Trans-Pacific Partnership and CELAC. So if we can target that a preferential trade agreement with any of these, India will be able to reach a sizable number of countries in Latin America.
My name is Shlok. I'm an intern here at ORF. Yeah, like I said, I'm an intern here. My question is just more general. One is related to economy and trade, international trade, whereas the second one is more of a strategic question. So, firstly, as of now, India's trade agreements with most of Latin America and the Caribbean includes raw materials, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, etc. Right? So, with countries like organizations like the EU have done is they've taken initiatives that incorporate climate action into their free trade agreements and PTAs, right? Clubbing environment, renewables into their bilateral FTAs. One of which I think is with MERCOSUR, if I'm not wrong. Would it make more sense for India to take that kind of an approach of clubbing energy with bilateral PTAs along with pharmaceuticals, raw materials, etc.? And second, like I said, strategy. While India does have bilateral relations with Chile and minilaterals such as MERCOSUR and other MOUs with Argentina, etc., like you just mentioned, it was highlighted clearly by Sir that India needs to take a more assertive role. Would it aid India more if it were engaged with other minilaterals or established minilateral setups? And I say minilaterals and not multilateral because of an ideological divide and asymmetry in economy, etc.
First question. You talked about climate change and incorporating it in the bilateral. So Caribbean is obviously a very sensitive, ecologically sensitive area. We already have agreements about climate change there. So it might not be a part of our bilateral agreements or our PTAs or FTAs. We have climate change agreements or agreements focusing on climate change and mitigating it with certain areas which are more ecologically sensitive already. So, and also when it comes to an FTA, one of the reasons that has not happened is there is a technical problem. When you go to a MERCOSUR country, according to the MERCOSUR charter, a country that is a part of MERCOSUR cannot sign an FTA with another country. So you have to circumvent these problems as well. The second one, I think somebody else can take.
When you talk about minilaterals, the problem with Latin America is that there is surplus of multilateral groupings. And so Brazil is part of MERCOSUR, Brazil is part of PROSUR, UNASUR, of CELAC. So it's called, the model is called spaghetti bowl of regional groupings. And, the seriousness gets lost. So because simultaneously you're part of many groupings. Therefore, I would say that the strategy should not be minilaterals, rather attempting, a bigger regional groupings, because that makes it easier for India also. We tend to forget what was the agreement with SICA, with CARICOM. So I think it's better to target the larger groups, according to me.
On this, that it's not an easy issue, but perhaps it's better to think in some vertical challenges on sectors, such as, energy, health, and to work more on verticals than in the platform of MERCOSUR. So perhaps to work on verticals could be a good way.
Except Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, Chile, to some extent, with most of the other Latin American countries, you have to prioritize what segment, what way, how to proceed. 2, the follow-up mechanism, the monitoring mechanism, the specific sector-wise cooperation mechanism is yet to be functional with all these countries. Say, talk about Caribbean countries. They are diaspora countries, but they have oil well now. Mittal Ispat is there. There are lots of rare earth minerals are available there. But you have to have a strategy which is not pan-Latin American strategy. It will be strategy you mark to them. And the first point what you made about the Global South is not becoming Global South because it is far from South on the basis of the differences on sustainable development goals requirements. Where is the funding? What is my necessity? How do I collaborate with the developed countries to get the funds? Who will give the funds to Africa? What is the need of India? So therefore, adding that concept in this segment, the climate change is not possible for the time being. Maybe in future, yes. Thank you.
Greetings to everyone and good evening. My name is Sankalp and I'm a research intern at ORF. So my question is really simple and it's not about more strategic or diplomacy, but it's like could be in the segment of sports diplomacy. I want to ask about the football aspect because I've had few Latin American friends, especially the Argentinian friend, and he always talked about the football love in the nation and also in Brazil. We've also seen that many Indians like Messi and Neymar. So has India and Argentina or maybe Latin America explored this dimension? And if yes, then how? Moreover, lastly, I believe that India wants to develop a good football team in our international forum. So could Latin America help in that and also to like look into the talent of Indians because we are so many people. I mean, we can only take 11 Indian for a good team. So is there also a dimension which you have considered? I mean, it's a bit unconventional question, but I think it's good for people to people ties.
A very good evening to one and all present here. I am Avinya, a research intern here at ORF. My question will be on China. Given China's deep economic footprint, how can India place itself as a credible non-hegemonic alternative or maybe a partner? And to it, a follow-up question like, is India relatively making a low-key presence in Latin American strategic choice, or it's a gap that needs an urgent diplomatic rethinking? This would be my question.
Good evening to the speakers. I am Pranav. I am a student, and my question is in regard to energy security for India. Right now, we are importing most of our energy from.
So I'll start with your question, energy security. Political stability is not too much of a problem when it comes to importing oil or crude oil or natural gas. India needs energy. India needs energy resources. And wherever we get them from, cheaper, we would move towards that country. Russia and, like you said, West Asia or Middle East tend to be the biggest energy partners to us right now. Middle East has always been an energy partner to us. Traditionally, Russia, after, of course, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, we know that those dynamics changed and it made economic sense for us to buy. We've bought from Nigeria as well. So Latin America, once we get over this initial hurdle of, oh, it is so far, that is one problem where we get over it. More if we have, and also if we have more access to the region economically, like Reliance, I believe, has signed something. So as ONGC Videsh, as more companies go there exploring, you're going to see a bigger import denomination from that region. Completely replacing one of our traditional partners, I would say that would take time. Mostly because India is also moving towards diversification when it comes to energy partners. We also do not want to depend on one region because it just does not make economic or strategic sense. So that India versus China, I believe. So I think I said when I was talking to you the first time that India and China are focusing on different sectors when it comes to trade. China is almost all pervasive. And we are not losing an opportunity there. It is just that we cannot compete at the moment. Those are the facts. I'm not trying to be pro China or anything, but that it just, the money is with China. What we can have is we will have to develop a niche market. We are not the advantage is we are not seen as predatory at all. So that's great. If we bolster that with great diplomatic action, we can look at energy, pharma, automobiles, things that we are good at, things that Latin America already gets from us, and agriculture. Services, of course. Services is something that we can obviously look at. So those are the sectors where we must focus, and defense as well. So those are the sectors where we must focus. Instead of competing with China, I believe it is better if you look at what we can do right now and focus on that. In the future, if there is ever a point where we need to compete with China, I think we'll look at that in the future. Football, I'll leave to you.
speak about energy. No, no. I think that the division of labor is clear. Yes, I mean, of course, that in some sense, football is our soft power. I mean, mainly Argentina and Brazil. Yeah. This is true, and if you see in the case of Argentina, well, Marcel, I am a researcher. I am not an authority of Argentina, but so my comments are mainly speculative. That in the case of Argentina, we reopened the embassy in Bangladesh after the huge movement that was there with football. And I think that to this decision, football influence. Yeah. So I think that we are under exploiting this, of course, in the sense that we should do more things with this. Perhaps I know that some clubs from Argentina have been done some things here. I think that Huracan and the clubs of the level of the National League. My doubt is if this gives money. In the sense that it's a lot of effort, there is a lot of funds, but the clubs or they have to do this, they have to earn money. And I think that we have to think how it would be the business model for this. But I for example, River Plate, that is I'm supporter. I know that they are looking at China, at India, but I think that they still do not know how and to do this, and if this is gonna give money. So, but this is an area that I think that we should be working more.
There are already 3 coaches. Huh?
I agree with what Gonzalo says. I mean, we call it the football diplomacy, you know. So it's very interesting for us. It's as Gonzalo says, Manuel says, it's a part of our soft power. However, it's very difficult to put them together, you know, because Argentina's clubs are huge, and their intention is, of course, Europe, where the money is, you know. So as soon as India's league grows, there will be more opportunities. And in that case, I'm pretty sure that we'll be able to increase cooperation between 2 countries. Sorry.
May I ask a follow-up question?
Just one point on China. I'll just like to respond on China. Yeah, it's very interesting. You say that China has a deep economic footprint. But if you look at the elections, recent elections, whether any Bolsonaro, Javier Milei, they always, before elections, they say that they want to, not have so much ties with China, because there's a dilemma for all the countries, whether they want to have proximity with United States and China. So this dilemma we can take advantage of. And India does not have a geopolitical baggage, whether it's going to be, Latin America has these tensions, US or Russia or China. So if they align with India, whose goal is earlier was non-alignment and now it's strategic autonomy, India has an advantage. So India will have a fair play in this game.
To India for a YPF. So if you can throw some light on that, please.
Thank you. Manuel, I think let's just combine last bunch of questions. We have just minutes left before we close. So perhaps we can combine that last question with a couple of others. Yes, please.
So first of all, thank you so much for the insightful session. I'm Sandra and I'm an intern at ORF. So my question is about what ma'am was talking about, the spaghetti bowl thing. And I'd like to ask about BRICS. So given that India and Brazil, 2 countries who are a part of BRICS, and given that Brazil is the presidency doing it this time. My question is, how do these two countries, what are your opinion on how do they tackle the non-West, anti-West sentiment, given the BRICS expansion, and given the fact the whole Russia-Ukraine crisis, and the fact that Brazil is a part of ICC judgment to arrest. So, I mean, with all of that in place, how do you look at the anti-West, non-West thing?
So, I'm Yashika Prasad, a student of political science. So, when we talk about such regional engagement, one of the looming threat is definitely the political ideology. Once the leader changes, the mindset changes, the engagement breaks apart. So, when we're talking about India and Latin America engagement, this is a bit idealistic take, but is there a way that such engagements remain resistant to the, the political changes in our country as well as in Latin America, so that such engagements remains for a long run?
I have a follow-up question. A lot has been said about China and how China has made inroads in Latin America. India has a formidable capacity-building presence in Africa. And that has actually given India a lot of leverage, sincerity in terms of sincerity. So is that going to work in Latin America as well if India focuses on capacity building?
Hi, I'm Ahan and I'm a research intern here at ORF. So my question relates to the sovereignty of multiple South African and Latin American countries in fisheries and also China. So because of a weather phenomenon called the El Nino effect, multiple countries off the coast of South America and Latin America have bountiful fisheries within their exclusive economic zone. Now, recently we've seen China send long-range fishing fleets to go and fish for fish like salmon, trout, cod, and other fish that in the exclusive economic zone of countries such as Argentina. I saw videos of the Argentine Navy intercepting and destroying illegal Chinese fishing vessels. Due to India's autonomous status and lack of geopolitical baggage, could India perform a role in bolstering the navies of Argentina and other South African and Latin American countries to face this threat?
Affected countries are Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, but I don't think anybody wants to fight. And China already has withdrawn their fishing boats. But this thing happens between India and Sri Lanka. Wherever, like today in the global situation, catching extra fisheries in an easy way is something nobody can avoid and many fishermen cannot avoid. But war situation will not take place at all. Therefore, India's assistance is not called for. Then Africa part we are talking about, African situation is absolutely different. Even if with Latin America, each of the country we have terrific relationship, individual level, country level. But when you put them in a grouping, their needs are different. Say Venezuela, you can buy oil and minerals. That's it. What they need is, apart from pharmaceutical, their needs are different. We are talking about Uruguay. Uruguay is a superpower in agriculture and milk products. But their needs are different. Say, for example, boats, mechanized boats and parts, etc., their needs are there. Therefore, we have to somewhere work out a monitoring system in government, in public sector, in private sector, and with Indian businessmen to reach out Latin America. That is one of the big problems.
Thank you. About YPF, YPF, that is a partly state-owned enterprise, the main petroleum enterprise in Argentina. Of course,
it's a mega, one of the top companies of the world, YPF.
Yes. Nowadays, YPF is mainly focusing on Vaca Muerta. That is our area in Patagonia that have shale oil and gas, yeah. And in the last, I think that 2 months ago, there was like a tour of YPF presidents in different parts of Asia, and he also comes to India, and they signed an agreement on lithium, yeah, cooperation on lithium. And the main, I think that the main project there is GNL, CNL, or LNC. Yeah, the thing there, the main issue there is who puts the money. Yeah, because I think that they have different interviews with Indian enterprises, but there are big projects. Yeah. So if you look at the news, Milei signed an agreement with Meloni yesterday in order to export gas to Italy. So the main issue there is that I think that the money should be put by the Indian side, yeah, and is it not advancing at this point? I think that this is the.
Nalco is one of the interested companies.
Yeah, exactly. And then about BRICS, I mean, BRICS, of course, that are they have a huge potential in terms of population, yeah, capabilities, growth. The things, so BRICS should be a platform, yeah, but still BRICS has to evolve in order to have more concrete instruments. Yeah, I mean, now you have the BRICS Bank or the Asian Bank, that this is the main instrument, but you need more concrete funds and forums in order to advance with BRICS, because by now it's like a group, but inside the group you know that there are different views, because China is not the same. I have not the same view that India. At the same time, I think that perhaps sometimes India and Brazil compete in some issues. Yeah. So as I think that what we always ended in our discussion on India, Latin America, is the huge potential that we have. So we have a huge potential, and India have an interesting present. So if I would have to emphasize in some idea, is that that India has to be more assertive in this agenda. Yeah, in all of these agendas, India has to occupy his role. I mean, if you open the newspaper and you read, we are the fourth economy in the world. Well, come on. Argentina is not the fourth economy in the world, and Brazil neither. So that's my vision.
So I'll just take Sandra's question. How does India tackle the anti-West sentiment? India and Brazil tackle it within BRICS, right? The reason why India and Brazil are in BRICS and they work together is because they are fighting the forces of globalization, one. Second is that the both of them have been, canvassing for reforms of multilateral institutions, especially the United Nations P5, Permanent 5 structure. They want to challenge that. There are newer challenges in global governance about which they've been very vocal. And they've been very vocal about the peaking issue of climate change. So these are the issues on which, and these are the issues in which somehow they have been able to portray this or build advantage of the South-South linkages, and they've been, how somehow they've been able to counter the West sentiment, because they've been trying to portray or pinpoint that the problems are due to them. And that is how they've countered the anti-West sentiments within BRICS. Okay?
Quickly, your question about political ideologies. You asked this question, but then I would ask you to reflect a little. When have relations between countries actually broken down because there was a change in political ideology in one country? Latin America tends to go through an ideological change every time there's an election super cycle. We keep reading about the pink tide coming and going, and yet India sort of continues to have great relations with most countries. So this is a very pragmatic decision, and it bases itself on strategy, on economics, on a bunch of other things. So I don't think that there is going to be a relationship breakdown because there is an ideological change in the regime of a country. So I think that sort of answers all questions here.
Thank you all for coming. Clearly, this is an unfinished conversation, and we, as was pointed out, there in the audience lies a few people whose intellect and expertise in Latin America we could easily use in the next panel. But thank you all for coming. Can we and thank you especially for to Charge d'Affaires Marshal Lebofi to be in the audience. Can we have a round of applause for the speakers?